And welcome to Remember When, Episode 2, where we're covering Darkwing Duck, Episode 2. Ironic, isn't it? You know, Darkly Dawns the Duck Part 2. It's amazing that this series is, personally, I'm just gonna fangasm here for a minute. Darkwing Duck is one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and the theme song is just the bee's knees, you know? But seriously, it really helps balance out Darkwing Duck as a hero, as an individual, as a crime fighter, and most importantly, as a father. Because this series portrayed realism. Yeah, I know he's a talking duck, and this whole series is full of ducks, rats, and other things like that there. But this series was just absolutely amazing because Darkwing tried to balance fatherhood, and in case you didn't know, there were a couple of times where Darkwing himself tried to give up crime fighting to be a full-time parent. Now, what father does that for their kids these days? I mean, here we have a clear-cut vision of Darkwing Duck and Goslin getting along as though they were father and daughter already. All he did here was pick her up and protect her from Taurus Bulba's thugs. And she already seems to trust and like him. I'm guessing probably because the superhero figure. She asks him clearly, why do you wear a mask? And he says, because, you know, criminals are frightened by the unknown. Kind of sounds a little bit familiar, You know, the whole superstitious and cowardly. Moving on. Okay, but moving on. Now, back to the plot of the story. It turns out Taurus Bulba's suspicions were in fact correct, that Goslin did know the code for the Ramrod, but she didn't know she knew. How did she know? Plain and simple. Well, maybe not so plain and not so simple. You see, her grandfather had taught it to her in the form of a beautiful lullaby about a rainbow. And as it turns out, the Ramrod's controls are multiple colors. So he decided to disguise the code in a lullaby and teach it to her. But unbeknownst to her, that would make her the target of Taurus Bulba. Now, when Darkwing learned of this little factor, he made it his mission to protect Goslin even stronger than before. He became more and more worried about her, and not just so much for the fact that, you know, she's maybe a witness or anything of the like. He genuinely cared about her. So you would think that Goslin is safe in Darkwing's protection, but unfortunately, Taurus Bulba has other plans. He decides to flash lights in the air from his ship, which actually turns out to be Morse code. Now, Darkwing, as imbecilic as he can be, you know, he's more of a crafty superhero discovering tiny little knickknacks and things, but you wouldn't think he'd understand Morse code. But as it turns out, just as Taurus Bulba suspects, he sleeps with a freaking Boy Scout book under his bed, rather under his pillow, as you can see here, which he uses to decipher the code, which basically tells him to come meet me, as told by Taurus Bulba. Then he sends his little eagle pet out into the air to scout for him for where he comes from. Again, this is something that shows Darkwing and Taurus Bulba's, you might say Batman Kingpin or Spider-Man Kingpin relationship, because Taurus Bulba was basically the kingpin of the series. Unfortunately, he was only shown one major time in this series. I mean, sometimes it just takes one major appearance, because this shows how crafty Taurus Bulba really was. He calls Darkwing under the lie that he's going to surrender himself, when in fact all he did was lure him there to distract him long enough for his boys to go get Goslin. A very difficult task, mind you, when you remember how much spirit Goslin had when I showed you in the last episode, but they still unfortunately successfully capture her. And right here is where Darkwing screams her name, knowing there's nothing he can do to stop the kidnapping this time. So unfortunately, Darkwing Duck goes to prison for the false robbery of the train. You know, they thought he did it. But enter, and I do mean that literally, Launchpad McQuack, returning originally to bail Darkwing out, but, you know, hey, heroes don't stop for paperwork, right? So he decides that he's got to go save Goslin because she seems to be the only one, besides Launchpad, who actually believed in him. And speaking of believing in you, who is this much of a fanboy? He made a ship that looked like Darkwing, calling it the Thunderquack. I mean, you talk about your fangasms, woo! But Launchpad's fangasm pays off when they jet off to save Goslin. Now, in true cartoons fashion, it doesn't take long for Launchpad and Darkwing to track down Taurus Bulba. I mean, seriously, I don't know what kind of radar they must have had on that thing, but I've never known Launchpad to be that much of a creator. I mean, he crashes planes, not build them, and he built this one. Look at this. Look at how it just outshines Taurus Bulba's, fancy schmancy air destruction stuff, But like a hero, Darkwing doesn't let it stop him. They blow an entry hole into that thing and pound right through it. But Disney didn't forget to leave out the slapstick, as they also have Hammerhead Hannigan doing his thing, rushing like an idiot, and Darkwing, being the smart one for once, actually jumps out of the way, or trips him, or however you want to call it, and flat face right in the pole. And he goes and wants Goslin back. Unfortunately, Taurus Bulba, being the smart guy that he is, well, there you go. Hostage situation. Which leaves Darkwing, unfortunately, unable to do anything else but surrender. I mean, even here, right here, even when they're captured and facing danger head on, Darkwing doesn't forget what he's there for. He's there to be a hero. But like any other terrible villain, the big bad bull decides that, I'm going to torture her anyway, and you're going to tell me what I need to know. He insists he doesn't know, and then he, does this. Like a freaking criminal! I mean, which is pretty smart to think about it, but then, he's not going to let her die because that's his bargaining chip right there. And now, reluctantly, with nothing else to do and no other tricks up his sleeve, Darkwing has to reveal for Goslin's safety that he in fact does know the code to operate the Ramrod, which he uses to Taurus Bulba's delight. And then Taurus Bulba tests it on the Federal Gold Reserve, or whatever the hell that thing is. And when he does so, he unfortunately reveals that he has no more use for Goslin or Darkwing, to which here he tries to dispose of Goslin, but thankfully, Launchpad steps in and saves her, proving that the word sidekick is not a dirty word in this business. And now with Goslin safe, Darkwing does what he does best, be the daring duck of mystery, the mighty masked mallard, first getting the drop on Taurus Bulba's men, then doing his best to outshine Taurus Bulba's intelligence, proving that he's got intelligence of his own, and overloads and short-circuits the Ramrod, causing him to do a whole myriad of colorful, funny things like this here. And with that, Taurus Bulba has had enough. He will not stand for it. He refuses to be beaten by Darkwing, even if he has to take him with him to oblivion. I mean, right here, it literally looks like Darkwing died. And if we didn't know that there was going to be more to this season, more to this series, you would think so. Because this is where the drama sets in. And I have to say that this series knew how to create tension. It knew how to create drama. And it also, despite what you might have seen throughout this last few minutes, knows how to create a happy ending. And with that, a busted up, broken, but not beaten Drake Mallard, aka Darkwing Duck, goes to where Goslin's orphanage is and basically decides that, hey, I need this kid in my life. I need her to set me straight. I need that balance. And Goslin is a balance for Darkwing. She basically keeps his ego in check, and he helps keep her safe. And let's not forget about the lovely sidekick that I've only talked about a couple of times, Launchpad, who is the master of crashing. But there you go. This is the main point of Darkwing Duck I just wanted to share with you. Does it hold up? Yes, it does. It's a beautiful, wonderful series, and I'm definitely going to be covering it more in episodes to come. But for now, I bid you adios.